is the principal.
Many thanks for staying with us. Now, on the front page of the Nation newspaper, it says, Rivers emergency, you are meddlesome interlopers. NAS tells 11 PDP states. The writer there says that Senate, writer says Senate 61 billion naira cost against Adamawa and 10 others. States still fragile despite relative calm, says EBAS. And then we also have Tribunal upholds FCCPC's $220 million fine against Meta and WhatsApp. Bello reiterates commitment to consumer protection. Article hits PDP leaders as Oberiwori defection unsettles party. Accuses them of sipping tea, making deals with Tinubu. And then rather there says as well, APC to defectors, we have room to accommodate all. And then more confusion as dispute over national secretary rages. How party got 2 national secretaries in 2 days. We also have a picture here on the Nation of world gathers as Pope Francis goes home. That's the headline there. Akpabio leads Nigeria's delegation to the Pontiff's burial. We saw in the news yesterday where some of our bishops, the bishops of Abuja Diocese and Bishop Matthew Cooker, as well as other prominent Christian leaders, made the move to attend his funeral. Rider says, a big story here says IMF applauds Nigeria for exchange rate reforms and subsidy removal. It says, tariff hike, Okonjo-Iweala says Africa's trade with US irritated. Ibrahim, drug abuse, right there. So it's interesting to know that Mohbad's story, the death of Mohbad, there's still issues surrounding his death. There's still investigations, still ongoing up to the time of this day, And then his second autopsy rules that he abused drugs. Rules out. I beg your pardon. Rules out drug abuse, and then 1.3 trillion CBEX fraud. EFCC declares 8 wanted. Over time, with the coming of CBEX and other Ponzi schemes, no matter how well packaged it is, one would think that Nigerians have learned their lessons. As at the time of MMM, I think we had other schemes like this that are disguised as investment platforms, well packaged, well put together. And sometimes you wonder, because of the people who are at the forefront of these investments, sometimes these are ex-bankers, people who you would expect better from, who you would never, think would be or dabble into such kinds of schemes to defraud people, to defraud, innocent people of their money, their hard-earned money. And there's been several debates around, CBEX and the investment schemes and how people, so for some people it's the fault of the the founders or the those people who are at the forefront rather than the supposed investors, those who are investing into these schemes. And for some people, it's the fault of the investors and it's out of greed. And people are saying that one would think that people or Nigerians have learned their lessons as to not put their money anywhere, just anywhere, and do the due diligence before investing in certain kinds of platforms. And now that the CBEX platform has crashed, it came with a whole lot. A lot of people are depressed. I saw a video where someone was attempting to commit suicide as a result of the crash, simply because people have put millions of nairas into this platform. People have put their monies for business, their savings. Some people go as far as using, that platform as, platforms where they have their life savings. I mean, to an extent, I think that it's some level of carelessness. While I would want to say, I would say, and a touch of greed, while I would say greed is also part of it, I also think that it's careless. If we're talking about greed, for instance, someone wanting to put ₦1 million and getting back 10 million naira in 2 weeks, it means that that person is not careful enough, not sensitive enough, and to an extent greedy. Yeah, that's the word. That person is greedy because you don't want to you don't want to do your due diligence where you have to investigate such schemes, such platforms, and see how these returns come about, the profit margin and all of that. How is it possible for me to put ₦1 million? Where does this money go to, regardless of the lies that you're told, and then I'm getting 10 million naira. So over time, we've seen this happen time and time again. It's a pay Peter, rob Paul kind of scheme. Okay? Today, you're paying in your money and waiting 2 weeks. Another person who has paid 2 weeks ago is getting your money that you paid today, and then the cycle continues until it can no longer go around again, and then it crashes. And who are the people who are the beneficiaries of these schemes? Those who, started it, those who came up with the initiatives. So it's a bait they look for when, people have invested more. And the thing with Ponzi scheme, it's, how you want to catch a chicken or how you want to catch a rat or, something. You just take for instance a chicken, you're sprinkling guinea corn feeds somewhere around, dot, across a long line, a vertical line, trying to get that chicken into a particular hole, a particular place, and then you nab it. So I think of Ponzi scheme like that, and it's quite unfortunate that people don't learn, because you're putting in 1,000 naira today and you're getting 10,000 naira tomorrow. And it's interesting when you have to put in such little amount of money, and in the blink of an eye you're making times 10. And then okay, if I can put 1,000 naira and get 10,000 naira immediately, why can't I put 10,000 naira and get 100,000 naira? Why can't I put 100,000 naira and get a million? And then why can't I put $1 million and get 10 million? Oh, 10 million. Why can't I have some monies in my possession? Why can't I just put 100 million naira and get 1 billion? I mean, that's how it is. And before you know it, you're putting 100 million naira, your money, and that of other people who are in your possession, and you're running into debt because the platform crashes. It's quite unfortunate. I read of a story of someone who is into contributions. I think it's thrift. Daily thrift, the daily thrift contribution, daily or monthly thrift contribution, and then where people get to put a sensible amount of money, and collective thrift, and then at the end of the month, they have numbers, So this person had the monies of people in his possession, and went into CBEX, probably got a few cash outs 1 or 2 times, and then decided to put all of the monies in his possession into CBEX, and CBEX crashes, and now he is depressed. So we don't want to put ourselves into such situations. If you want to gamble, if you want to play, be sensitive enough not to put the monies of people in your possession, because that can diminish trust, that can, destroy your reputation for life. when you do such acts, I consider it an act of carelessness. So let's be careful and let us properly investigate investment platforms. It's very necessary that before you put your money anywhere, properly investigate, do your due diligence, and beware of Ponzi scheme. Too good to be true. Any platform that tells you put 1,000 naira and in 2 days you're getting 10,000 naira or significant amount in that line, be careful. Okay, we cannot overemphasize these things. Well, let's move on to the blueprint weekend. We have the big title says rising cost of medicine, rising cost of Medcare. I beg your pardon. Concerns as more Nigerians turn to social media for prescriptions. This is sad. The writer says quacks having field day on social media, according to experts. So while people are complaining that the healthcare, while Nigerians are complaining that the healthcare system is, a state of emergency, we need a state of emergency. They're calling on President Tinubu to declare a state of emergency in the healthcare system. This is one of the reasons, because people cannot afford consultation fees. Some of the reasons why people don't even go to the hospitals when they have certain symptoms is because they look at the cost of, getting down, transporting themselves to the various medical centers and paying for consultation fees. Most times the long queues, and at the end of the day, they would have to, maybe pay for certain things, tests and all of that, and they would rather self-medicate, which is at the detriment of their lives and those who, under them. So, and then experts are saying that people are turning to social media, people are turning to the internet, where anybody, licensed or unlicensed, can come up with, a prescription, talk about certain things where they have little or no knowledge about, and just talk about it, give prescriptions, give consultations. I would not like to call it consultation, just give advices, on certain illnesses. And people are, they are at the mercy of these quacks who are on social media, who are taking prescriptions from these people who sometimes would have negative effects on the patient. So experts are calling for better regulations. I think that there's a way we can go about it where just anybody cannot just come on the internet and take the tag of a doctor. And also, we need to also emphasize the importance of people to be properly checked by a medical doctor or a certified, medical doctor, so that we can reduce the incidences and cases of self-medication. People have, who have taken it. Some people may have chronic diseases, may have, symptoms of chronic diseases, of, conditions that needs critical care or an expert examination. And because they resort to taking to social media to self-medicate, look at symptoms and just take up any drug, to go to the pharmacy and just take up anything that wasn't prescribed by a medical expert. And at the end of the day, we've had cases where people just assume that this and this is what is wrong with them, and the prescriptions or the medicines they've been taking contravenes or it's counter, it counters basically fights their immune system, or, elongates the symptoms, and, makes it even difficult for them to find healing or relief. So we need to push out the message that people need to see medical professionals. And also the healthcare system as well. We need subsidized medicines, subsidized healthcare. We just need to ensure that healthcare is accessible for Nigerians. Celebrities, influencers often mislead followers, Dr. Ubani, and then stories of Nigerians slumping, dying, commonplace due to self-medication, like I just mentioned. A lot of people are taking drugs they don't know if they're allergic to, if they're, the people just, because of self-medication, you just take a drug and before you know it, people are slumming and dying. So we need to ensure that safety comes first. World attention on Vatican as Akpabio leads Nigeria's delegation to Pope Francis' burial yesterday. Then, man divorces wife at police station after arrest in hotel raid. That's one thing with the weekend, because we get to see and talk about some of these stories that we usually would not feature when it's the weekday. So apparently there was a raid in a hotel where these people were taken, how policemen do to investigations and all of that, pack up people in hotels. Apparently, this man did not know that his wife was in a hotel until, he was called upon to come bail her in the police station. And then the stories about how they were raided in a hotel, and he was wondering, you don't work in a hotel, you don't have any business in a hotel. What were you doing in a hotel at that time? You most likely would have slept there. And, she most likely would have told him he was visiting a friend or something. He was just basically surprised to find out that his wife was in a hotel where they were raided. And then he proceeds to divorce wife in that police station. There are questions as to, is that enough reason to divorce? Isn't that, a spontaneous action so instant? Wouldn't you wait to find out? Wouldn't you take your time? Where is the place of forgiveness? A whole lot of reactions. So, well, for me, I'll keep my comments to myself. Now, health dangers of chemical ripened foods. Health dangers of chemical ripened foods. I beg your pardon. Yeah, we see this. I remember when I was in Lagos, this was really common because people would take up fruits that were unripened, were not ripe yet, and then they would do a lot, go as far as boiling mangoes to ensure that they sell out fast, so that these fruits can become ripen. And people go as far as using chemicals to ensure that these fruits become ripened as fast as possible. We need a lot of sensitization, and we need to begin to apprehend perpetrators of these things, because they are risking not just their health, if this is a constant practice for them, but also the health of Nigerians, the health of many people. So we need to also, look into this to ensure that these people are apprehended. I mean, it's such a pain to know that people are constantly, you've seen this time and time again, not just for fruits, but for foods as well. I remember there was a video, a documentary, or I'm trying to remember where I saw that then when we were in school, where she shared about how they had used chemical to preserve grains that were used for making tiger nuts and what we call Kunu whole village, and how people had diarrhea and had, they were stooling constantly and all of that because of the chemicals that were used in preserving that grain, stooling, vomiting, a whole lot as a result of that chemical. So we must be careful, and we must ensure food safety agencies, NAFDAC, relevant agencies, we must do our bit to sensitize people and to also apprehend perpetrators of this act, just to ensure that, there's safety of the lives of people. Moving on, we have rivers still fragile. I need more time to prepare a brief. IBAS tells reps, that's the sole administrator of Rivers State. Bears return as equity market shares 202 billion naira. 2027 align with Center for Dividends of Renewed Hope agenda, Kalu tells Southeast. These are the stories. And then just above the nameplate, we have Tinubu ready to pass leadership baton to next generation. Jandor urges president's re-election to actualize it. Then the Punch weekend, we have a story here, says, big story, banditry, hunters seek for backing for physical and spiritual warfare. Tinubu should sign bill to recognize us as paramilitary force And then we are ready to make sacrifices for Nigeria. Hunters are not just hunters, residents, people, natives of various communities are beginning to, seek for protection somewhat against these attacks by bandits and gunmen, because people are saying that we can no longer just pretend and wait for military personnel to come to our aid. We must begin to look for solutions, particularly because our lives and that of our livestock and our properties, our farmlands, our means of livelihood are not safe. We can be sleeping 1 minute and the next minute, we're in hostage and finding ourselves in attacks by these bandits. So we time and time again we've emphasized the need for our vigilantes to be well equipped in terms of tools, in terms of machinery, in terms of training as well, because these people are the closest to these communities. While we wait for military personnel to be deployed, I think there was a time there were talks around military personnel deployed to farmers, one military personnel or a certain amount of military personnel deployed to farmers in rural communities just to protect them. But the thing is, what's the ratio? How much of our security personnel can we deploy to various villages and communities to protect these farmers? Reason being that I don't think that is effective enough. The closest we can get is for every community. I'm sure we have local vigilantes, we have hunters. We need to train them. We need to sensitize them, and equip them as well to be able to ward off these attacks, because truly we're tired. Time and time again we've been hearing about bandit attacks, and these days they've become very, very consistent across states. Gone are the days when we would say that these bandit attacks only happen in the north, where we say, oh, it only happens in Borno, in Maiduguri, in certain parts of the north, Adamawa, and all of that. Now, we are seeing these bandit attacks down to the west, even down to the east. The east has even become more, troublesome. We experience more of these attacks, even in the east. And so this is happening literally everywhere, every part of the country. And so we need to take action because, again, I would say that the security of lives and properties in Nigeria and the welfare cannot be overemphasized. The importance of the security of lives and properties cannot be overemphasized, because where we don't have security, we don't have progress. Where people cannot do business conveniently without fear of what would happen, when people cannot go about their daily activities without fear of what will happen, there's no progress. There's no progress. When people cannot go to bed, close their eyes, have both eyes closed, trying to sleep, then there's a problem. It just shows that there's unrest, and we do not want to continue like that. Where people cannot sleep, cannot go to bed, and close both eyes, wanting to sleep, then they can't even as well get up to go to their farmlands to do businesses. So we must ensure that we take proactive measures beyond talks, beyond calls for, security chiefs, beyond the meetings and all of that. We want to see proactive measures being taken. If not, we forbid a case where people are going to take laws into their hands and, begin to look for ways to protect themselves. Well, inside Nigeria's morgues, where humans and rodents compete for body parts. This is interesting and quite sad. We really don't want to go into these stories, but you find that story on the Punch Weekend. It says, help. This story right here says, help. My wife disappeared with my 4 kids and property. Journalist, according to journalist, he says he cheated with many women, says mother-in-law. The mother-in-law of this journalist here has attributed the reason for his wife running away with 4 kids and his properties is that he cheated. Interesting thing, we're having the Global Morning Weekend. These conversations, you can send us your thoughts at Global TVNG on Instagram and on Facebook as well as regards these conversations. Is that reason enough? Is cheating reason enough for a woman to leave her husband? Let's hear your opinion. Why I chose to become a commercial bus driver? Woman battered by Lagos thug. So apparently, there's a commercial bus driver who is female in Lagos. There are actually several of them like that who are in Lagos, who are in supposedly male-dominated spaces, who ride. We see them ride tricycles, ride buses, and all of that. And this woman here, who happens to be a commercial bus driver in Lagos, was beaten by Lagos thugs. And if you want to be in this male-dominated spaces where, in Lagos, particularly where you have to do this sort of jobs, then you must be thick-skinned. She shares her reason why she chose to become a commercial bus driver on page 2 of the Weekend Punch. And we still have the story of Akpabio Kuka, lead delegation to Pope Francis burial, and then scandal. Oshu monarch pastor admits to COVID-19 fraud in US. Barrister raised me, but I didn't learn Fuji from him. K1, the ultimate right there. And then Atiku slams Tinubu as Kwakwanso weighs options for 2027 election. And then we also have EFCC fumes as motivational speaker demands $18,000 for mentorship. Here, and then these are the stories we have on the front page of Saturday and Sunday Punch, the Weekend Punch. We move over to the Vanguard newspaper, where big story here says, Oberiwori Okowa's defection to APC, unmistakable battles ahead in Delta. Who leads Delta APC? Oberiwori or Omoagege? How will Ibori Okowa finally resolve their unsettled quarrel? Why Putin, Netanyahu may be absent as world leaders, millions bid Pope Francis farewell today. That was yesterday. And then we have Plateau communities attacked, occupied by criminal headsmen, rise to 64, renamed once revealed. And then tribunal upholds FCCPC's $220 million fine against Meta and WhatsApp. We have tension grips Labour Party as fears spread OT and other members may join APC. Wike gives conditions for peace in Rivers. You find that on page 7 of the Weekend Vanguard. And 2027, Atiku dividing PDP. He will not get our ticket. Odeyemi, ex-PDP deputy spokesperson. And then 2027, Nigeria going to the way of Peru, says Bugaje. And then let's move over to the Guardian Weekend. The Guardian Weekend says World Issue and Peace. It says World IP Day 2025. Intellectual property and music, a living partnership. Special feature, we have boundary disputes ignite killing and violence among Osun and Oyo states. That's the Guardian Weekend. Tinubu, world leaders bid Pope Francis farewell yesterday. Then we also have alleged defilement Ogun. Ogun drops charges against school proprietor Adelaja. Ibas appears before Reps Committee, says Rivers still fragile. And then Fawemi's property, Falana, Arongunda Day, others decry safety threats as developers ignores setback laws. And then lastly, we have not lastly, I beg your pardon, alleged defilement. Ogun drops charges against school proprietor Adelaja. And lastly, we have Dangote Elumelu Jimo, Nigeria's real brand ambassador. Now let's look at our final paper for today, which is the Weekend Trust. The Weekend Trust. It says Nigeria could be greater than America, Lindsay Barrett. And bandits kill 28 in fresh attacks in Zamfara. 2027, governors who may defect to APC. How vigilante groups protect communities, create problems. 68 persons killed in 3 months. Grain hoarders face massive losses over declining prices. And lastly, phone snatchers send victims to hospitals. Yes, I would like to comment briefly on the grain hoarders who are facing loss over declining prices, particularly for those people who are into storage businesses. They must have the cost of production, cost of having to pay harvesters, those who are going to process the grains, and even for those who just merely buy and then hoard these grains at a certain period of time, they must have done so at a higher cost. And now that we have the prices of grain declining, these hoarders are going to face massive losses because of the declining grain prices. And then for phone snatchers, it's quite unfortunate that we have a lot of people who are pickpockets, phone snatchers, who are robbers, whether daylight or at night, cut across states, in every state. And time again, these people, they found various means of operations, whether by using commercial cabs, where people now, talk about one chances or one chance where they are robbed in these cars. They are oftentimes kidnapped, and even after being robbed, if they're going to be released, they're pushed out of these cars, and, which now makes the victims of these people have several degrees of injuries where they're sent to hospitals. And I've had incidences, we've heard of incidences and cases where people try to, struggle with these people, and then they're stabbed and they're killed, or they have injuries, severe degrees of injuries. So my appeal is that people should learn not to struggle with these bandits, struggle with these robbers, I beg your pardon, because your life comes first. You need to ensure that nothing, no amount of properties, no amount of money is equivalent to your life. Nothing compares to your life. And so when you encounter these people, we do hope and pray that we never get to find ourselves in such situations. But when you encounter people, when you encounter a robber, when you encounter thieves, or you get into vehicles where you are not safe, you enter a vehicle that is, you find out that, okay, you may be in the midst of robbers, and so you should know when you don't have any defense at that point in time. Please do not struggle with them. Do not become apprehensive. I think the only thing you can do at that time is to plead, because no amount of property, no amount of money, like I mentioned, your phone, nothing, your laptop, your valuables is equivalent to your life. It can't be compared to your life. Those properties, those documents or whatever it is you have can always be gotten again. But your life, if it's gone, it's gone. And even times when people are lucky enough not to die in the hands of these people, they spend months, if not days, in the hospital trying to treat varying degrees of injuries as a result of, their brutal ways of dealing with people. A couple of months ago, I was in a hospital to see a colleague, and then right beside her bedside was a victim of one chance incident here in the city of Abuja. And you need to see the degrees of injuries on her face, the stitches, the stabs. It was really terrifying. So sometimes you don't even necessarily have to struggle with these people, and they do all of that to you. How much more when you now begin to struggle with them? So we need to be careful, and then we need to be we also need to be vigilant. Be careful. Do not move at night if it's not necessary. Be careful the kinds of vehicle you enter, and also ensure that you enter vehicles at designated parks, if you can, and limit movement, unnecessary movement. And to our security personnel and government agencies, we need to declare state of emergency as regards security, because we're no longer talking about security in rural communities or in villages and states. It's happening everywhere, in form of robbers, in form of one chance, in form of phone thieves, and all of that. Well, that's how much we can take on the program. We hope that some of these issues are duly looked into and implemented. And we hope that you, our viewer, has had an interesting time today on Global Weekend. My name is Queen Agaba. Don't forget to follow us across all social media platforms using @Global TV NG and other handles now showing on your screen. You can also download the Global TV Nigeria mobile app for Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcasts. Thank you for watching and have a beautiful Sunday ahead. See you again.
Welcome to Global Morning.